Hello, everyone. My name is Brittany Shaw. I'm a curatorial assistant here in the Department of Film at MoMA. I am so pleased to welcome you to the contenders and the screening of First Cow. I'd like to thank A24 and our year-round sponsor, Chanel, as well as our members for supporting us and tuning in. Tonight, I am so happy to be joined by much of the First Cow team, including writer, director, editor Kelly Reichert, actor John Magaro, and writer John Raymond. Welcome, everyone. Very nice to see you.
Yeah.
Maybe since you're all together here, just to start, Kelly and John, I'd love to hear just about maybe the origins of your collaboration that sort of led us here to this moment.
John, you're in the dark. You do
it. Let's see, boy, the origins of our collaboration. Well, we were introduced by our dear mutual friend, Todd Haynes, back in the turn of the millennium, I guess. We had a handful of conversations back in those days. Kelly would come out here and visit Todd in Portland sometimes. And then I moved to New York and our paths crossed a tiny bit. And yeah, Kelly was looking for something to adapt that ended up becoming Old Joy, a story that I wrote, and that was the first thing that we worked on together. And I think through that process, realized we liked each other and wanted to keep talking about stuff. And so now, that was 15 years ago, so it's been good.
Yeah. True.
Confirm.
Well, I should say I first thing I read of John's was The Half-Life before I asked him about Old Joy, and because The Half-Life had just come out around the time we met, or you were still working on it when we first met, I guess.
Yeah, I was working on it. You might have read it as a galley. I don't know. Yeah.
No, it was a book, as you would say. Anyway, then the Half-Life became pieces of the Half-Life became First Cow.
It's so nice to think of you sort of like carrying that around with you, like through the years, maybe thinking of it at different times.
Yeah, we did. We talked about it on and off, but it always sort of seemed a little too big to get our arms around. It was mulled over for a long time.
Yeah, it simmered on a back burner until it got reduced. Yeah.
So much of your collaboration is set in the West, the Northwest, kind of a number of places out there, but I'm curious what leads both of you to, I guess, be inspired by that place. I know you both live there, so it's sort of what's outside your window, but it is a place that has so much mythology. So many films are set there. It's kind of loaded in some ways. What's your relationship with it? Like maybe even before you started making films, I feel like Westerns were always on the TV when I was a kid. It's sort of this place that gets like shouted at us a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I'm from Florida and I have lived in New York City for 30 years. So my pull to the West was really started with Old Joy and working out here. I was just getting to know the Pacific North. I mean, I came out our friend Todd Haynes moved out here and I started coming out to visit him, but I didn't, it's really through these projects that I've sort of come to know the West. John's
I grew up out here, like I was, in California and Oregon, so like very West Coast oriented. And like what you say about the Western is true. I mean, it is such a big foundational kind of mythology for us. But that said, like the Northwest is sort of like different in that way. Like it's actually not represented a ton, as far as I know, on film, at least not in that Western sort of genre.
Very dusty and sun-drenched. And
yeah, right, totally. I mean, but that kind of, so in some ways, yeah, there's something kind of obscure and strange about the history of the Northwest that I've found interesting, you know, being someone who lives here. And, you know, when I was growing up, in like fourth grade, you know, we learned about the sort of great migration from the East Coast to the West Coast and the wagon trains and everything like that, and Manifest Destiny. And I mean, even at the time, that struck me as such a crude and weird kind of history. It's like, really, Manifest Destiny? Like that's the story of out here. And like it's just been interesting to get to, you know, with Kelly, tell a lot of other non-Manifest Destiny stories.
Yeah, and I'm sure like doing that research and learning all of that has really, I imagine, like informed how you feel about the place where you live, learning like, you know, what really happened versus what we're told. I think so much like attention or like love that's been sort of put out towards First Cow has to do with the softness between these friends. And that's not something we get to see a lot. They're very tender. It's something very special to behold these kind of quiet men forging a relationship. Can you talk about just building those characters and John certainly inhabiting that character, finding that softness and that chemistry between the two of you?
I don't know, John, do you want to speak to where these sort of characters came from first, and then I can talk about what it was like to inhabit it.
Sure, I can say this for a sec. I mean, again, it's kind of what you mentioned, Brittany, the that like Western myth, you know, is so ruggedly individual and like super macho. And I think that was part of the genesis of this, is like, how about different kinds of people that you see out in these territories, out in these landscapes. So that was kind of the simple idea in a sense. And yeah, what John did was just beautiful for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was like you guys have said, it's just nice to play the opposite of every other Western kind of hero, to play somebody who is more tender instead of just ultra masculine, macho, whatever. And we've seen that a lot. So it's nice to come into it from a different angle.
Actually, the character was written to be tough, but we just couldn't get
Yeah,
down.
there's a lot of rewrites that went into it.
A lot of gunslinging.
You have to work with what you have. You have
Yeah,
to work.
exactly.
You have to work with what you have.
We had Orion to fill those shoes.
Yeah, exactly.
And I know he's not here to talk about it, but can you talk about that chemistry between you and finding that friendship on screen?
Well, I mean, really, a lot of it is in the script. The way that John and Kelly wrote it in on the page was that made it really clear. You know, there wasn't much for us to do except try and get out of the way and, you know, just say the words and listen to each other. Yeah, it was very, very clear. So Orion and I, we had a brief, like a week before we started filming, to get to know each other a little bit. And we went on a wilderness retreat to kind of get to know each other. And that was the extent of it. But really, we just leaned into the script and let Kelly guide us.
So I have to mention, from my queer perspective, I saw many kinds of love between these men, certainly friendship, but also some very tender glances that I think could be seen as more. I don't know. I mean, you all made the film. I don't want to tell you what it means, but from my view, I certainly saw something that could have felt romantic or like romantic yearning, something very, very kind of very much between the lines. And I think those moments that really caught me were when Cookie tells those jokes and the like happiness on his face when King laughs, just like feels like, you know, being kind of like a closeted kid or something, and the girl you have a crush on is like, you know, you made her smile or something. I don't know, I wonder, was that on your mind at all? Like, did you feel that in these characters, or is that just
Like that
fan
question.
fodder?
Oh, I, it's great for anybody to experience it however they experience it. I don't know what was on John Magaro's mind, John.
You know, I sort of second what Kelly's saying. I think it's up to you. I mean, I don't think there's any denying that there is a love between them. They're all they have in that world. They're all they have. So yeah, I think there's a very deep, profound connection. I have my thoughts. I know Orion has his, and I'm glad that everyone else watching it gets to form their own, opinion.
Another really like tender way we kind of get to know you guys is through your very individual relationships to nature. You are so like of the earth and always crouching down and like, the dirt on your hands, and King is always kind of so in the trees and feels of the air, also seems much more comfortable in water than you. I'm just curious, Kelly and John, I guess, and John, you too, what draws you to just like working in nature or sort of depicting nature?
Well, I mean, so much of it for me, I've gotten very used to shooting outside in the wilderness, and because of John's writing mostly, is how it all started. But now it is like when fall is just coming, I do sort of find myself wishing I don't really go into the wilderness unless we're making a movie or scouting for a film. It's the only, I'm very unadventurous unless I'm in it with everybody and we're all doing it. And I really miss it. I'm just like, oh, it feels like we should be outside right now. It is a nice, it's kind of how in this last wave of filmmaking, well, I guess my other films were made outside too. Some of it in the beginning was economic because I just didn't have any lights. And so that, I think the first time I wrote John, I said, do you have any short stories that take place all outside? And, and that a dog could be written into it. And that's how I got Old Joy. But yeah, some of it was just practical in the beginning. And now, I don't know, it's hard not to, we kind of often start with a landscape or a place, a farm, just a place anyway, is often at the beginning of our conversations.
Yeah. They do, generate out of landscapes, and but they're all kind of human landscapes at this point out here, it's like, it looks like naturey and stuff, but it's really all like very like human bounded and human tended and everything. And it's like, even though they are out in the woods, in a sense that is not that different than like the world that we live in, just in the town here, it is easy different, but it's
easy for you to say. Easy for you to say.
What do you mean?
I don't know. I just a pretty lush forest out there. There's some untouched forest.
Well, like Meek's Cutoff, for example, is not.
That was way out there.
We're still out in it, John Raymond, for 11 hours a day. It doesn't matter that you could drive an hour and be home.
I'm just saying it's really quiet in this town is all. Yeah.
The natural world extends, to the animals too, which I think for Cookie in particular is such a really like, they bring out his personality so much by allowing him to sort of express himself non-verbally. And Kelly, you're obviously no stranger to working with animals. They're pretty present in all of your films. What draws you to that, or what does that afford you in your storytelling?
Again, in the beginning, it was practical because I had a dog that could never be left alone. And so she got written into Old Joy. And then she was part of Wendy and Lucy from the beginning, because I just had this dog that just no one would take. She was whatever. She was very great, but just
her movies were a way to babysit her.
Yeah. But anyway, so it was practical in the beginning, and then I think we realized after Old Joy, for me, I realized how much it freed the actors. Like, it gave the actors always something they had to respond to. They couldn't be planned or whatever, aside from the weather and the environment they were in that they had to respond to. And so Lucy became important in that film in a lot of ways. I think we didn't suspect in the writing stage of things. And then of course, Wendy and Lucy. But then, then it got taken up a notch when we were in Meek's Cutoff dealing with oxen, and that was a bit extreme. But it does. They do provide this a break from how films usually work. In the case of First Cow, and in the film I did previously in Certain Women, where crews are just so go, 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 go. And it's all about fast and when there's this animal there, you have to adapt to that. And everyone has to sort of move in slow motion and whisper, be quiet, use eye contact to communicate. And the whole thing becomes about this, the whole scene changes. And it's an interesting process, but not one that cinematographer Chris Blauvelt loves. He doesn't love it. But
I mean, you must have had close to a dozen or something animals featured in First Cow. No, he made it work.
He did. It was some. In First Cow was the first time we used some trained animals. I mean, Evie the cow had to be trained to feel okay on the raft and that sort of stuff. But it was the first time I ever used trained dogs, which I really was not into at all. And so friends started swapping dogs out as we went. They were just like kind of treat robots, and it takes away the thing. They don't interact with the actors; they interact with the trainers. And the whole point is for the actors to have. You should talk to John about working with Evie.
Yeah, I would love to hear. But I mean, that slowdown that you just described, Kelly, it seems like something that Cookie is really like experiencing. That those are so lovely.
John, that could be the call.
My brother. I can avoid that one. It was a trained salamander, actually. That was the most trained animal on that set.
Lie still on his back. Talk to us about working with Evie though, and those very tender.
Oh, Evie was, it was interesting hearing Kelly say that. I've been going around, people asked, other people I've talked to have asked, what scene was, your favorite shooting, which is always tough. But in this, for some reason, those scenes with Evie at night talking to her stuck with me. And maybe it was because something changed on set when you have this enormous animal there, and it was quiet, and we were almost more connected than you are with other actors sometimes. But it's nice. It's nice to have animals on set. It was nice when we had the dogs on set, but having Evie there was really, it was really.
And then one great moment. Oh, sorry, John. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, those are my mom's favorite scenes too. She tells me like every couple weeks how much she loved the scenes with you and the cat. She's like, those are my favorite scenes in the movie.
Yeah.
Thank God Ryan's not here to hear your mom say that. We had this scene with this owl, Dimitri, and we had these baby eagles and mother hanging out where we were shooting, and Dimitri came, and this owl is like a dog, like with paws. I mean, it's huge, like an 8-foot wingspan, and Dimitri is supposed to go up in the tree, and then the trainer holds a dead rat, and it's very gruesome, and he flies down. It's all supposed to happen really quickly. It was the end of the night, and it was really cold. And again, the whole crew had to be frozen, so not to scare the owl. And the owl went up in the tree and was just really aware of the eagles in the area, and stayed up in the tree for like 10 minutes, just looking around while the guy held the dead rat. And we were all just in position of like, we're just going to be here for a second. And just to see, 30 people freeze and wait for an owl to come out of a tree. It's cool.
Oh, yeah, completely stopping time. Yeah. I imagine so much research must have gone into getting this very like tactile feel of the world from, cookies, gloves to their hut. I don't know what you call it, a house, a cabin,
We called it a hutch.
a hutch. That's
Tony Gasparo is the production designer, and him and his team, and our props man, Paul, and the whole prop team, Sean Fong, who made the biscuits, and April Napier, who was a costume designer, who truly, it was like putting people in a time machine, and after they'd come out of her room, and I think helped a lot for everyone to just be in their characters and feel what was going on. But yeah, that research, aside from obviously John had done a ton of research for the book, and then there's different stages of research, but really great having the art team. But John, maybe you want to talk a little bit about going down to the museum.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, it was great to get to research all this stuff, because honestly, like in the writing of the book, it was pretty like, practical. Like you need to get a few things and make it seem like it holds together and stuff. But yeah, it became clear like quickly that there was just a lot more information that was going to be needed, and particularly, I guess we realized that there were going to be like Native American people in the frame and stuff, and that felt like a different kind of responsibility, just because of the history of that representation, and particularly in this region where it's like there's almost none. I mean, it's like it's so rare to have seen those cultures represented, especially in like fiction movies, and like that world plays a little bit of role in the book, but the the adaptation took such a like right degree turn that there was just a little bit more of that world that was going to be appearing. And so but yeah, we got really lucky because just like a matter of months before we like started to dig into this, this really beautiful little museum was opened up out towards the Oregon coast by the people on the Grand Round Confederated Tribal Association. And the museum is called the Chichalu Museum, and it was just like a small little cultural museum that they have out there with like an archive and like a really nice little collection that has some of their stuff, and weirdly is like borrowing stuff from the British Museum that had been sort of pilfered from the region back like around the time that our movie was set. And they were so generous and incredible with their resources, like just letting us camp out in the archive for a while, and like showing us a lot of the objects, and then ultimately like having a really profound, like just being able to do that and have that conversation with them, and the sort of generosity they showed at that early phase, it felt like it really carried through. And there's some of those people and conversations I know ended up, being on set and helping Kelly and everyone in the actual, shots and stuff. And it was, and then the other element of that was the language. Like we had multiple scenes that were going to be spoken in Chinook Wawa, which is like the remaining kind of language of the region. And
the Chinook tribe that is like depicted in the film.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. It's in the script, they're actually called Multnomah, which is more like a kind of portmanteau description of like multiple tribes and bands around here. It's like kind of an archaic term, but the Chinook tribe is not currently recognized, and there is a group of people who are working to try and re-recognize the Chinook Nation as a official sort of thing. But because there's not like and so they sort of fall under the umbrella of this Grand Round Confederated Tribal group. But because there's not really a particular representative of Chinook at this point, like everyone was just more comfortable like not calling it Chinook, but calling it Multnomah, which kind of just brings in a bunch of other people. But yeah, the language that they speak in the film is based in the Chinook language in as much as it still exists. It's actually kind of a trade jargon that arose through the beaver pelt trade. There's a language group at the reservation that translated for us and like was just super helpful. It was really an amazing process to go through. And then just hearing people speak it was just really fascinating and amazing. I mean, that's something that these guys can talk about, of just like the way that the language kind of bled through the scenes a little bit, I think.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, hopefully the language survived through all of our learning it in a short amount of time and me editing it. Like I hope it made its way. I mean, Orion Lee really became, and Lily Gladstone sort of became, had the most ease with it. But yeah, there were nights in the van with the sound crew who's hearing it the most, sort of we're all correcting each other going, okay, wait. Hopefully, yeah, hopefully we're in the ballpark.
So the kind of capitalism and the settler colonialism is something that I feel like is really hanging, I feel like almost just out of frame. It's something I actually didn't even really think about that much as I was watching the film. It's something that I kind of like left the theater, left my couch, and was able to kind of like contemplate in the days following, which I think is a really beautiful gift, to be told this story about these two men and a friendship, but then be able to step away a little and see maybe this larger context. And I guess one of the things I was thinking about is just how Cookie and King are kind of fitting into that system. And are they, are they complicit? Are they being exploited? Are they exploiting? It's not black and white, but just kind of seeing that depiction, wondering how, maybe John, maybe how you feel like your character fit into all of that.
I mean, I think that these are two outsiders, but they're not antisocial, so they have to fall to some extent in line with this basic capitalism that's going on out there. You certainly have haves and have-nots, and there are have-nots, and whether they're being exploited or they're exploiting by taking the milk, I think that that you can look at how you choose to look at it.
Yes, not even the milk. I feel take that milk from that man, of course. I guess the exploiting, maybe thinking of the foundation of what they're contributing to, knowing what happens, the destruction.
I mean, you see the detriment it causes. I think that ambiguity, Kelly and John can talk about it, but I think that kernel of capitalism, that very basic form of it, and the ambiguity around it is what leaves you walking away and thinking about it on your couch a day later, and having these questions.
The theater of your.
Oh, go ahead.
I just like the expression, the theater of my couch. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's kind of interesting about this particular time and place that we're talking about, which is, the 1820s or something in the Columbia Basin, is it's like, this is like pre-America, like there's not even a country yet, and like the kind of pieces of like government that are there are largely global corporate. I mean, this is sort of global corporatism in its like earliest form. So there's that going on, but then there's also just like commerce going on in its most also ancient form, just like people trading things, and people, it's like a form of like just sort of community, but also of just society. It's like this is how people meet each other and like blend together in a certain way. And so there is just something like really primal about this particular time and place, I think, that is like, on one hand there's like global capitalism, but there's also just the bizarre. So yeah.
And you know, Cookie and King are as it seemed like they're as into it as anybody. You know, they have goals, they have dreams, they want to open a hotel and bakery. So they went out west, so they seem on board to take that ride on capitalism.
But
Yeah,
even,
they're hustlers,
even
yeah.
Cookie's dream, though, kind of almost just seems like this expanded version of domestic bliss, right? He just wants to, like, I mean, maybe he wants to get rich. I can't say, but he wants to, like, make a place for travelers to sleep and feed them sweet
I
biscuits.
mean, it's not as nefarious as
Yeah.
the giant corporate overlords, but he's happy to, you know, take his piece of that.
Yeah, he's not just a pure creature.
Yeah.
Sorry, Kelly, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say he gets his things delivered from Amazon.
Yeah,
He's against it, but it's so convenient.
so convenient. Not to dwell on the capitalism too much, but Kelly, it is something that I guess I've kind of like admired in your films through the years, this kernel, and certainly in Wendy and Lucy, but I think you can see it in many of the works. And just thinking, I guess, about this kind of bigger moment we're in, where I think so many people are looking for kind of better, simpler ways to live, maybe. And at least here in New York, I think a lot of us have come together in sort of mutual aid and community care and all of these really wonderful things that have always existed, but I think are in the foreground a little right now. All this to say, I'm just thinking of linking your kind of let's say, themes of anti-capitalism, and can we trace that to maybe an anti-capitalist filmmaking practice itself? I know people talk about your budgets a lot. It's something people say, Kelly Reichert, the low budget filmmaker. And I'm not saying that's necessarily virtuous or not. I'm just interested in how that kind of informs your practice.
That's oh, I could go on so many tangents. Stop me, John.
No? Okay.
How does she do it? Enjoy working for less. Yeah, but
That's not what I'm asking. I guess what I'm asking
I
about
know, it's just in there. Not that you're asking it, I'm just saying. But no, I feel very lucky to get to make any films at all, believe me. But John, help.
I guess I'm really thinking about like ideas of really like community and like.
I mean, I think the question through all the films and that is inherent in a lot of John's writing is the question of community and what is our responsibility to each other and what do we owe each other? Is it each man for himself, or are we obliged to help each other? I mean, I was just, before we got on, looking at these insane, crazy lines at food banks this week. While everyone's 401k, some people's 401ks are rising through the roof. So, I mean, it's part of the American story forever, I think. You know, and how complicit we all are in it is, you know, what we can ask ourselves. And yeah, so I think it's, you know, sort of the base of a lot of the stories and maybe in the early conversations. And then we do try to move away from it and focus on characters and you know, and just watch in small places of where, as we're making the film, of where it can, just to be careful of how the details and hopefully that they're going to add up. And in a way, it's kind of unknown until we're, till I'm editing, and I'm always pleased when I, you know, put things together and think like, okay, this bigger thing that we had to sort of stop focusing on in certain ways is coming through, and you know, but that is not the central part of. I mean, when we're shooting, we're really focused on King Lou and Cookie. I
think we're sadly out of time. It was really nice to see all of you here today.
Thanks a lot, Brittany.
Thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in.
Thank you.